Reporting from Arkham Asylum, this is Gotham Rogues. In this video we take a look at the comic book storyline Batman Faces. Written and penciled by Matt Wagner, Faces was published across 3 issues of Legends of the Dark Knight in 1992. Like most stories from that title, it takes place during Batman's early years, although not too early as the Dark Knight has clearly had at least a couple of run-ins with Two-Face already. Anyway, in this story Bruce Wayne plans to buy a private island from fellow billionaire and friend Paul de Urberville. However, Bruce is not the only one who wants the island. A mysterious second bidder suddenly appears, who turns out to be Two-Face, in cahoots with the Urberville's real estate agent, Nelson Wren. So what does Harvey Dent want with an island? Well, it turns out he's gathered an entire army of physically deformed people and plans to make the island into their safe haven, where they can all live in peace, free of society's judging eyes. Of course, Two-Face doesn't actually have the money to buy the island, so his takeover involves a whole lot of scheming and killing. Naturally, the only one who can stop Dent's demented little plot is Bruce Wayne's alter ego, Batman. So in this comic we get the classic version of Two-Face, namely the one where being cast out of society due to his disfigurement turned him to crime. With 1990's Eye of the Beholder, this take was basically replaced by a Dent suffering from severe mental issues instead. I prefer that version, but that doesn't mean I don't also love the old shunned freak Two-Face. Faces being published 2 years after the reimagining makes me view it as a throwback and a final farewell to the classic Harvey Dent. So vanity is the main theme here, but one thing I've seen a lot of fans complain about this story is, why would Harvey feel such a kinship with deformed people? The ones he's gathered to live with on the island were born with their physical deformities. Harvey wasn't, he was disfigured much later in life. This almost makes me want this to be a Penguin story instead, as it would have suited that character better. But one way it could have been saved is if Dent didn't single out deformed individuals, but anyone with some form of physical defects, including disfigured people, burned or injured in some other way. That would have made more sense. It would be less the Isle of the Carnival Freaks and more just the Isle of generally hideous looking people. But it's a flaw that I can overlook, as I do really like this story and its themes. Unlike in a lot of other stories, I wouldn't really say that Two-Face is the protagonist here. He is more just a villain, the big threat that needs to be taken down. But that doesn't mean he isn't interesting. Harvey's scheme is in a sense noble. He wants to help these deformed people, or his people as he sees them. He's not after a selfish goal, like money, power, or even revenge. But at the same time, Harvey's pretty misguided. It's revealed that not all of the freaks are in on this scheme willingly, and have been forced to participate. It's like Dent has become overzealous and completely obsessed with this idea that no freak can live a good life in normal society. He's been blinded by his mission. In the finale, he gets to meet another Two-Face, a man who's just like him, yet lives a good and fairly normal life. It's an amazing confrontation to behold. Of course I won't spoil too much now, but Harvey is forced to question everything he believes in. He's been excusing all of his evil actions because of how society has treated him and how it treats all other freaks. In other words, Dent believes that there is no other response than to become an actual monster. But here's a guy who's been able to pull through and still be a decent man with a purpose in life. It kind of shatters Two-Face's entire worldview. So Harvey isn't really the protagonist, but neither is Batman. The story doesn't explore Bruce Wayne. He's just a hero, there to stop the villain. Not that that's a bad thing, not every story has to be about Wayne. I like how he's portrayed though, more as just a guy in a cape, punching people, doing interrogations, dusting for fingerprints. There's actually quite a lot of nice detective work at display in this story. But my point is, here Batman is far from the Bat God that he so often is nowadays. So if neither Harvey nor Bruce is the protagonist, then who is? Well, I'd like to think it's Nelson Wren, the real estate agent. That may be just how I see it though. But he's the guy the story really follows, as he goes through an emotional roller coaster. Nelson is an introverted geek, a guy who works with numbers and never really gets out to have some fun, to live. He hasn't had much experience with women because of his personality, but then he meets and is seduced by Manon, a beautiful, sultry lady who just so happens to be Harvey's patsy, sent out to secure Nelson as their in man. He's then pulled down deep into a web of conspiracies and double dealing, completely ruining his life. Poor Nelson. When he finally started to live, he got in way over his head. Paul the Urbervilles is also an interesting character, and it's revealed that he isn't quite what he seems, as Paul hides a terrible secret, namely that he isn't exactly normal either. The idea here is of course that no matter how perfect a person may seem, there might always be something ugly hiding underneath. It doesn't have to be taken quite as literally as it is with Paul though. I really like the style and tone of this comic. It reminds me a lot of the early Bill Finger and Bob Kane stories from 1939. Many of those were dark, moody, and bizarre, just like Faces is. The artwork is also a bit reminiscing of Kane's early work. It also resembles the visual style of the animated series, which began airing the same year this comic came out. Batman especially looks a lot like he did on that show, and the city itself has that gothic style that was both present on the show and in the Tim Burton movies. I just love Matt Wagner's design for Two-Face here. His scarring looks great, and his suits are very interesting. Wagner really experimented with Harvey's look in this comic. The suits are different from the usual orange and purple he still usually wore at the time, and this story is actually the very first appearance of the red, more realistic looking scarring. It's a design I'm of two minds on. It can look great like it does here, but I think it's a shame that it's become the default look for Two-Face now. That's all we really see these days. I kinda miss the old green over the top Jekyll and Hyde style disfigurement. In conclusion, this is not a perfect Two-Face story, but it's still damn good, and I highly recommend it to people who want to delve deeper into Harvey Dent's back catalog. So there you have it. That's the comic book storyline Batman Faces. Remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.